is an ideal target to discover the therapeutics and the reason to modify lifestyles for prevention and treatment of cancer, strokes, heart attacks, and other deadly killers. And I just want to take just a few minutes of your time, and I want to introduce a dear friend, Laura Fetherolf, just to tell Laura's story here. Laura, would you like to come?
Good morning. I was quite surprised to find out this morning that I'd be speaking today, but not quite as shocked as I was to find out in December of 2008 at the age of 45 that I had a stage IIIC breast cancer. I thought I was living a very healthy lifestyle. I mean, I ate well. I never ate at McDonald's or Burger King. I stayed in shape. I practiced yoga every day. I hiked in the woods every day. And I was restoring a Victorian house and working quite hard at it. But what I didn't realize at the time was that I was under great emotional stress. I was pushing my body too hard, and what I thought was a good diet was actually filled with animal proteins and fats. After my original diagnosis and I went through the tests, I found out that I had a 7.5 centimeter tumor. I also had 4 satellite tumors. It was in my lymph. And on top of that, I had inflammatory breast cancer, which is a very severe diagnosis. It has a very low survival rate and is extremely difficult to deal with. A friend of mine that I had befriended about a year prior, a woman who was an osteopath that lived in my area, introduced me to a woman that was selling Dr. Nair's products. And of course I was skeptical and fearful, but my innate nature, my personality drove me forward to question and find out more about her products. So I went to visit this woman, and of course I was afraid of being taken advantage of, being in a compromised state. So she put me on the phone with Dr. Nair, and I spoke with her probably 3 or 4 times and read a couple books about the products before I felt convinced that yes, I wanted to do this. I of course was told by my surgeon that changing my diet and cutting out all sugar was probably not a good idea. I was also told that taking a fermented soy product would be extremely risky at this point in my diagnosis. So I decided to ignore that advice. And I started on chemotherapy on December 22nd. Because the cancer was so advanced locally, they decided chemotherapy was the best course first, then surgery, then radiation, and then a reconstruction. I was looking at what a lot of women do, 2 years of my life going through this process. So I started on heavy doses of fermented soy and curcumin on December 29th, a week after my first chemotherapy treatment. And Dr. Nair also suggested that I call a nutritionist who was a nutritional oncologist who specialized in integrative medicine down in Chapel Hill. So on January 5th, after an initial consultation with him, he prescribed a diet for me that was, what I found out later, was actually a macrobiotic diet. And Dr. Nair also suggested that I started doing meditative practices every day and also journaling to get out all my emotions. I implemented those things, and I then went to the Cushi Institute in March. I had heard about a lot of people who had recovered by changing their diets drastically, and then I curiously started meeting a lot of people because the Cushi Institute was in my area. I started meeting a lot of people who had recovered naturally. And so I thought, oh, there must be something really to this. When I asked my nutritionist about it, he said, oh, I was Michio Kushi's assistant for 2 years. So yes, I think you should try it. And so I said, great, well that solidifies it, I'm going. And so I went to the Cushi Institute for a week. And I couldn't help but be struck by the correlation between the fact that they recommended a whole grain and vegetable diet replete with fermented foods. and a lot of fermented soy foods. And so after that week, I got back home and I got much more heavily into the macrobiotics, and I started practicing Qigong meditation every day. I started on a new course of chemotherapy at that point as well. But after about the 6th week of this treatment, and after doing fermented soy and curcumin and the diet and the Qigong and lymph scrubs every day, by the 7th week of that treatment, I knew that my tumor was gone. My doctor was completely flabbergasted. At the end of that complete 6-month period, it was June, and I wanted to have all the tests run again. And my doctor said that that wouldn't be necessary because you look fantastic, you're ready to go to surgery. Well, I spent the next 5 weeks in excruciating agony trying to decide, what I should do. So I contacted an integrative physician and said, well, I'm going to get the tests no matter what. So I contacted an integrative physician and explained to him that I needed the test not to know if I should have my breast removed, but what would it do to my psyche if I knew everything was gone? Would that change my mind? So he did get the test for me, and indeed everything had disappeared. And I decided not to have surgery because by this point, through this 6-month escapade, I realized that the cancer was not limited to my breast. It was a chronic inflammation problem, and I needed to take care of myself and live a balanced life from many aspects, from an emotional aspect, from a nutritional aspect, and from a spiritual aspect. And so now, curiously, through everything that's happened, I've decided to share these benefits with other women, and I have started a nonprofit called Women's Integrative Network, which will help make women more aware, educate them, and support them in the use of these modalities in their own cancer struggles. So if anybody wants to talk to me about it, I'm at Dr. Nair's booth, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lauren. I just felt that there's so many inspiring stories of people who recover that we need to hear and to applaud and to celebrate. And that's the